Hi, friends, and welcome to Season 3 of the School Librarian Learning Network podcast. I'm Steve Tatro, often known as Dr. T Loves Books, and I love talking about all things related to school libraries. I'm an old dog who's always trying to learn new tricks. That's why in each episode of the SLLN podcast, I'll chat with a school librarian about a lesson, program, or activity they love. Hopefully, this can be a place for school librarians to get ideas and find new ways to engage with their students and staff. Speaking of which, I'd love to hear about what you and your friends are doing in your school library. Email me at drtlovesbooks@gmail.com. That's drtlovesbooks@gmail.com to tell me about what you're doing, offer feedback about the SLLN podcast, or to request a podcast sticker. As Amy Herman likes to say, being a guest on a podcast is a great way to show your admins you are engaged in meaningful professional development and leadership in the profession. So drop me a line and let's chat. That being said, the opinions and ideas shared in this podcast by myself and my guests are our own and do not reflect those of our school districts. I just like to geek out about school libraries. So without further ado, let's get to this week's episode. Hey everybody, I am back, and I am back with a returning guest, which I love. And we have literally been chatting for like half an hour, just shooting the breeze and just talking about so many awesome things. And this idea literally kind of just popped up as we were coming to the end of our conversation. And I'm so excited to find out about it because I know almost as much as you do right now, audience. So this is going to be awesome, and I cannot wait to learn more. Stacy, welcome back. I'm so glad you could come and join us again. I'm hoping you're going to be almost a regular guest because you have got so many awesome things you've got going on in your library. So thank you again for coming back. And just in case folks didn't catch you before, why don't you tell folks who you are, where you're at, and what you do?
Absolutely. Okay, so first, I am so excited to be back. I will come back as often as you will have me.
Woohoo!
Does not matter. So, hi, everyone. I'm Stacy Gilbert. I am a librarian in Northern Virginia, just outside of Washington, D.C. And my school is grades 7 through 12. So I like to say we have all of the teenagers. It's a pretty large school. We have about 3,200 students.
That is a lot of kids.
It's nowhere near the largest school in our district, but it's pretty big overall. I think last I heard, our district is the 9th biggest in the country now. I think that's our newest stat. That we're number 9.
When I was growing up, my high school had a graduating class of 176 kids. And I thought that was like big. And then I found out it was actually very, very small. And when I met my wife, her graduating class was 72, I think. So it was, just going smaller and smaller. And then I hear about schools like yours that are just so, your school could eat my school and we wouldn't even notice that you ingested it. So that's amazing.
I love the idea of these schools as like flesh-eating bacteria or something that just like absorb other.
That's how, that's the method of consolidation in the future. Schools are just going to go around and eat other schools.
There we go. That's our next dystopian novel that maybe turns into reality. We'll find out.
Yeah.
That seems to be a trend. Let's see. I've been a librarian for 9 years now, 8 years at my current school. And I was a middle and high school math teacher before going into library.
And if you missed our last episode, you definitely want to catch up on it because Stacy kind of talked through how she went from math to the library, which is an awesome, unusual, super cool path. So I love that you are coming to us from the numbers world. So great.
I mean, true. My journey is definitely a unique one. We'll put it that way. So yes, definitely go listen to that. And I love my school. My students are from every possible identity, experience, background that you could possibly imagine. And I love the opportunities that gives us to learn from each other and make each other better.
Which is awesome and a perfect segue into talking about this idea that you're bringing to us here. So you had sort of kind of been filling in on just the broad strokes of this. And I'm so curious, where did sort of the idea for this come from? Like, how did this come to be?
So this is a project done with our beginning English learners. And it was all started from one of our teachers of those students who came to me, and I had been advocating hard for his department to start using our makerspace. And I did outreach. I had department meetings in the makerspace, and we did activities. I showed them this is the kinds of things you could do with your class, blah, blah, blah. So I was pushing hard.
That's awesome.
He is an amazing teacher. He's only been teaching, I think 3 years now, but just phenomenal. It also helps that he is a former student of our school. Like he graduated from my school, luckily before I showed up. So we did do the math, and he could have been my student when I was a math teacher, but luckily by the time I got to that school, he was gone. So makes me feel a little old, but not too ancient quite yet. But anyway, so he came to me with this idea of he wanted to do something in the makerspace, but he was starting a unit on culture. And he wanted the kids to think deeply about their own culture, but also learn about each other's cultures within the room and have lots of discussing going on, lots of talking, lots of collaborating. He said when we were first coming up with this idea, one of the biggest issues was that the kids were very quiet and they wouldn't interact with each other very much. So we wanted to have something that purposefully made them work together. And you had to come together and figure out this thing like as one unit. So what eventually came out of it was, hey, what if the students had to take an element of each person's culture in a group and fuse it together in some way? And we talked about, that idea of like in a restaurant, it being a, Asian fusion or Mexican fusion, right? And the idea of you have elements of these different cultural foods that come together to make a new plate. And how could we translate that into the makerspace? So he did lots of lessons in his classroom about culture. I showed him in the class things to do in culturegrams. So they started digging into that database and finding information about each other's cultures and what makes culture and all of those things. And then they came into the makerspace it ended up being 2 class periods for them to, as a group, figure out how to create one object that incorporated all of their cultures.
I love that there's the focus on culture, because it's so easy to look at culture as a thing that divides. And I think once you get beyond that surface and you just dig into it a little bit, we start to see that there's so many things that unite us across our cultures, and there's so many things we have in common. And so I love that this teacher is thinking like, I've got students who don't seem to be connecting, but here's a way for them to both learn about their peers and also find those things that are going to connect them. So, I mean, just a brilliant, brilliant idea to use this as the touch point for this activity.
Yeah. And that piece that he wanted to dig into the culture was 100% him. And I loved that he wanted to go there and really, let's look at what is culture and what are those things that we have in common. Oh, in your culture, it's really important, this particular clothing style. Well, my culture has a really important clothing style too, even if they look completely different. That, that's what we have in common, right?
And I love that you were able to kind of push that collaboration and say, you've got this cool idea and I've got this awesome space that can help you realize this idea in a new and different way. So I love that you were pushing that collaboration even before this lesson came along, that you were kind of like, hey, makerspace, come and take advantage. And here they come to take advantage of the makerspace. That's great.
Right. Yeah. So the advocacy actually worked, which is a great feeling as a librarian, right?
Yeah.
Like, because, we're always trying to advocate and to see it actually, someone actually take us up on it. Like, oh, good. It was worth it. Absolutely.
And the research element, too, is great, too, that you're bringing them the databases and giving them the opportunity to kind of learn a little bit of research skill, learn a little bit of makerspace, learn about each other, like all these great little learning elements going on.
Yeah. So, you got to try to incorporate as many as you possibly can, right? Try to get them in all the different ways you can.
Absolutely.
But yeah,
so they did their research and they came back with the research, and then sort of how did it evolve from there?
So after they did their research on each other's cultures in their group, right? Then they had time in the makerspace to start brainstorming. Okay, so what are the elements of other people, your group mates' cultures that you might be able to incorporate or be able to combine into your object? And then we did a little bit of just kind of practice with teamwork, right? So we had kiva planks.
Okay.
And they had to work with their group to build the tallest tower they could with the kiva planks. But they had to, use their language skills, and they had to work together, and They had time to inspect each other's towers and see how other people did it and bring back their learning and figure out how they could make their tower better. So trying to get that collaboration
That's awesome.
juices flowing.
Yeah.
And then we wanted them to start thinking about, okay, so what are those things in common, right? And so we made them partner up, and you have to find something that you have in common. I said, and it cannot be that you're both students at this school. It has to be something that you think only you have in common and no one else.
Okay.
And so, I mean, we got things like how many siblings they have, and we got things like how long they've been in the United States. But we
Mm.
also got things like my family eats a lot of rice. And the partner's like, hey, me too. Right. Even though they're from completely different parts of the world.
Yeah, that's a
And
great
so,
one.
yeah, right? I was like, that is brilliant. All kinds of like different layers of culture, which was cool that came up. And then we made them as partners make groups of 4. So 2 pairs had to join, and they had to
Okay.
find something that all 4 of them have in common.
Hmm.
That was a little bit more of a challenge, but it was just trying to get them thinking about what does that mean for something to be in common? What is it that ties us together?
I love that both as a learning opportunity about our peers and almost an object lesson in the fact that we all do have things in common, and the ability to build your language skills by thinking about, how do I explain this? What are the ideas that I can express to these peers of mine? Even though we're all maybe working at a disadvantage in English, we're still going to have a way to, we're going to take the time and figure out how to communicate with each other in this shared language, which may not be our strongest, but yet it is what's bringing us together here. So that's lots of little bits here that are just tying together nicely.
Yeah. Well, hey, we tried. But yeah, so because there was lots of different types of skills that we were trying to support at the same time, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's that just literacy, type of skill, right? Trying to get you talking, trying to get you listening, the 4 domains of literacy. There we go. So there's that level. There's also that collaboration piece, and can you interact with others and use your language to do that?
Mm-hmm.
And then there's also that kind of deeper learning of, yes, maybe you're the only person in this school that is from your country, but you still have things in common with other people. You're still tied. We are still a community. You're a
Mm-hmm.
part of the school family,
Yes.
that kind of like belonging piece at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So trying as best we could to kind of weave all of those things together, and make it kind of cohesive
Yeah.
and make sense for the kids.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I want to do this with just not even my ELL populations. I just want to do this with my students that are, not feeling like they are part of the school community, because I feel like that can be a real detriment for the school and for the students when they don't feel that connection. And they sometimes I feel like sometimes it's like they're willfully, I'm in a middle school. So like, they've got that bit of, I'm too cool for this. But I think sometimes there's just a lack of understanding or an ignorance about the fact that they do have things in common with others, and they just haven't found those commonalities, and maybe don't understand that, yeah, we are all together in this, and let's work together instead of, being our own little islands. So I love that this is something that, I mean, I can absolutely see these elements being used in lots of different ways in lots of different populations. So this is awesome.
Yeah. Actually, after we finished doing this, the just kind of regular Spanish language classes, just the world language classes, heard about what we did. And so we did a version of it for the students that were learning Spanish.
Well, that's awesome.
But so instead of their home cultures, they researched, a Spanish speaking country's culture and did
That's
something
great.
similar.
Hmm.
Yeah, there's
Awesome.
a lot that can be, tweaked. And so listeners, I hope you find something that is
Yeah.
useful.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
But anyway, so then the students had time to make their vision a reality, figure out how is this going to work, and if you are making an element that is going to sit on top of someone else's element, well, you better make sure that your scale is similar, or that it'll
Mm.
work, or do you have the support underneath to do the thing, and all of those conversations that I had set in starters on the board for them to kind of help guide them. And of course, we were circulating a lot and making sure we kind of scaffold them through those conversations. But
Mm-hmm.
But it was just great to see the kinds of things they came up with.
I love that you're giving them the hands-on stuff too, because that's something that can be very easily lost in the classroom these days. Like, you don't get a lot of maker opportunities in a lot of places. And like, even in my school where we used to be very project oriented, we've sort of been pushed away from that by different curricular changes and stuff. And it's like, I love an artifact. I love a thing that you can put your hands on, that you have spent time, that especially as a student, to be able to see that the effort I put in is reflected in this thing that I have done. And like, I mean, I also love a Charlie Brown Christmas tree. Like, you give me the little, I spent 3 hours making this little clay figure that kind of looks a little bit like an aardvark, but it's actually my grandmother. Like, I love that. That's awesome. That you're putting in the effort and trying is the stuff that I love to see. And I love that you're giving your students this opportunity in the makerspace and kind of bringing them in for a subject that you would not normally think of coming in to use the makerspace. Like, I love that you were doing that advocacy in the first place and doing that collaboration in the first place, and that these students are going to get to benefit from it. Because, I mean, ELL and makerspace, I am fortunate that I have talked to several school librarians who are doing that kind of thing, but I don't think it's a regular kind of thing that goes on at school. So I love that you're doing it.
Yeah, for me, so much of the makerspace is about equity of access. I think a lot of times there are elements of U.S. culture that are communicated through physical objects and through kind of childhood experiences, right? I mean, how much of American culture is, can you hula hoop? Can you ride a bike? Have you ever played hopscotch? Have you ever played double dutch? Right? Like, so, and of course now, I'm also using old people references, but, but you know what I mean? Like, and for us old teachers, I think we sometimes take it for granted that kids know how to play with Legos. They know how to build out of Lincoln Logs or something similar, right? But that's not, number one, that's not always the case, especially these days when kids are overscreened. But even more so for our students who are new to the country, we can't guarantee that they've ever seen a hula hoop before. We can't guarantee that they've ever put their hands on a Lego before. And so what opportunities are we able to provide for them through the makerspace, giving them hands-on experiences that maybe some of our other students have had, but we're creating those commonalities by giving them these opportunities. Because now you never know what kid is going to hook onto the Legos. And now there's a whole Lego community for them that they never knew that they wanted to be a part of, right?
Yeah.
And the amount of conversations we've had to have with the kids about, do you know what a hot glue gun is? Can you use a stapler? And it's, those little hands-on manipulative things, but that if you don't have someone explaining to you and showing you how it works when you don't understand any of the language, then that's going to be a problem later. There's probably going to be some point in your life when it's going to be a problem if you've never held a hot glue gun before.
Yeah,
you know
absolutely.
What I mean? Even something that simple.
Yeah. And I would say it's not even just our ELLs that need those experiences, because you don't know what skills your students are bringing into your school. Because I used to do the stage crew for our plays, and I had a group of kids that were, very enthusiastic. And I had this one kid who, this is middle school, I said, okay, I need you to sweep the stage. And he grabbed a sweep broom and he started pushing it in front of him like he had seen the custodians do in the hallways. But you can't do that with a sweep broom. You need a push broom to do that. But he literally did not know how to sweep the floor. He had never done it. And like, I'm guessing he had never really seen it because he, just didn't have a reference for it. And it boggled my mind. Like, how can this kid not know how to use a broom? Holy smokes. But like, that's his experience. And like, who am I to say whether it's a good or a bad experience? He needs information. He needs to know, okay, if I want you to do this, let me show you how to do it. So, there's so many things in our students' daily lives that I think it's so easy to overlook or assume that they know something about. And I recently was talking to somebody about our students using our printer in the library, and they are so bad at using the printer. And a teacher was walking by and saw a kid trying to use the printer and was like, why is he having so much trouble? I said, because they never print. Like, why do they need to print anymore? It's not one of their skill sets. And we grew up with it and we expect everybody to know how to do it. But they don't have that experience. So we've got to teach them. So like, it can be tough because some days I feel like I need to go all the way back to like kindergarten skills and sort of work my way through because there's some kids who are missing stuff here and there. But, we've got to at least be willing to give the kids the benefit of the doubt, I think, and kind of say like, okay, you don't look like you know what you're doing. Rather than me getting annoyed that you don't know what you're doing, let me just take a step back and say, let me show you how that works. And then, hopefully that's going to be at least a lesson that they've got in how to do whatever it is. So sorry, I kind of went off on a tangent there, but it was one of those things that just every so often pops into my head like, oh man, how do they not know how to do this? And yet why necessarily should they know how to do it? Like it's not part of their regular instruction. So yeah, they may need some guidance.
Absolutely. I mean, the world that teenagers especially live in now is so different than the world that we had as teenagers. And I mean, even that those listeners of you out there that were teenagers, like, 5-10 years ago, first of all, I hate you. But I mean, it's just, the world is so different and it changes so fast now that, we can't fall into the trap of, well, you should know this by now. Like every kid is different. Every round of kids is different, like every kind of cohort is different. And I'm with you. We got to give kids the benefit of the doubt. A lot of times it's not that they have refused to learn. It's that they haven't had the chance to learn yet.
Yeah.
So that's a great thing about library is that we get to help fill in some of those gaps. Like you've never printed before. Like you don't, or our printer also works as a copier and the copy function always gets everyone because once again, they've never had to copy, but teachers, we have generations upon generations of wisdom about copiers in the teaching profession. But, they've never had to before. And so, they need a little help, and that's okay.
Yeah. Well, and so I love that your ELL students are able to get sort of this introduction to some things that maybe they haven't had the chance to experience before. So that's great. So they're working together and you've kind of brought them into groups. They're kind of building some collaboration skills. They're building some communication skills. And you were saying that as they're building these artifacts that sort of represent their culture, which, by the way, also brilliant that you're having them build a physical representation of culture because it's such an abstract concept. And yet it lends itself so well to physical representations because most of the elements of culture end up being some sort of physical element that is used on a regular basis in the culture. So brilliant, great idea. And they're bringing those together and starting to build. So like, do you have any sort of guidelines or you said you're kind of circulating and kind of help them out as they're going along?
Yeah. So we are very much kind of monitoring and making sure that they are understanding and communicating well between them, each of the groups. But the only guidelines, they're only limited by their imaginations and the materials, really. So most of the time, the problem is not that they're dreaming too big. It's that trying to get them to dream bigger. Because, there's a lot of safety in things that you've done before, right? It's a lot easier to draw a picture if you've drawn a picture before. It's a lot easier to, just make something on Canva, especially if you can use Canva AI if you've done that before rather than other things, right? Trying to kind of get them to think outside the box and dream a little bigger and to make them think in 3D because once again, most of the kids have not had to do that or at least have not done it in a very long time. The ones that have, maybe they used to build things when they were little kids, but now, they're teenagers. They don't do that kind of thing anymore. So that there's not a whole lot of guidelines there because we want them to stretch their creativity. And, so like I said, it's more of us trying to push them like, what else could you do? What more can you do rather than trying to hold them back in any way? And they very quickly figure out the limitations of the materials too. I don't have anything real fancy in my makerspace. It is cobbled together with like our personal funds and random grants and donations from random people. So it is very low tech. The makerspace is mostly cardboard, toilet paper tubes, pipe cleaners, and pom-poms. That's probably what I have the most of.
Okay.
Oh, and lots of hot glue. So much hot glue.
Yeah. There's no such thing as too much hot glue.
Right? Every year I buy like the bulk like replacement glue sticks.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh, this will do me for a long time. No, I have to rebuy it every year.
Yeah.
Just go through it. But anyway, so none of the materials are terribly expensive. It's just kind of, like I said, cobbled together and kind of cast offs. But it is amazing what the kids come up with and what they can create out of basically, let's be honest, trash we have just saved, right? I mean, it really is amazing. There is a group. So I just did this project last week, I think. And there was one group I absolutely loved what they did. It was a group consisting of a student from Vietnam, a student from China, a student from the Dominican Republic, and we had a teacher's assistant that also helped out and so wanted to incorporate his culture too, so added in American culture. And so between those four, they had to find something to create to represent all four of them, right? So what they ended up doing was creating basically, it kind of looked like a paper doll kind of situation, but it was pretty big. It was probably 2 feet tall-ish. I mean,
Okay.
foot and a half to 2 feet, somewhere in that neighborhood, cut out of cardboard that represented a particular doll in Dominican culture.
Okay.
And then that doll was wearing a Vietnamese dress. Then she was holding a saxophone as a representation of American culture. And out of the saxophone, instead of music notes, was the Great Wall of China coming out of the kind of horn of the saxophone. And
so clever.
they did such a great job. I mean, that was 100% them. And there was a little bit of guidance from us on, like, don't forget, if you're making the dress, you need to make sure it's the same size as the doll.
Mm-hmm.
But they figured out how to do that. The student that was making the dress ended up finding tissue paper and borrowing it. The other student had already cut out the outline of the doll, and so used the tissue paper as basically tracing paper and outlined.
He made a pattern for the dress.
Yes. Yes, he did. And so then the big joke became like, oh, you all are going to become fashion designers after this. Because, he out of tissue paper, he made a pattern and then brought it over to his materials and cut it out. It was amazing.
Yeah. I'm so curious how they got to a saxophone for American culture. That's when you said saxophone, I was like, it's got to be America, but that's an interesting choice. But okay. But like, I love that they have found these different elements and came up with, like, there's almost a narrative to the doll and the dress and the saxophone, like a person wearing the dress, playing the saxophone. The Great Wall of China is an interesting addition to that but I'm jumping ahead because I'm curious. They've now created this amazing piece of art. They created this artifact. Do they then like present that in some way?
Yes. It is one of their kind of like final exam grades, kind of. They have to present their art piece to the class, and the teacher invites kind of other quote unquote dignitaries, right? Like other teachers and administrators and things to come see kind of the presentation of their objects. And so they have to write out their scripts and they have to practice and be able to explain what each part, whose culture each thing is and how they put it together. And so, it's so great to watch them be able to verbalize it at the end.
Yeah.
And show that, that collaboration, those commonalities that they found.
Yeah. And I could even see adding like the extra wrinkle, and maybe not with an ELL class, but like if you're doing with another class, maybe you have to explain somebody else's element of the project. So to kind of like drive that extra communication, and also like when you have to teach it, you really have to know it. And so like teaching it to somebody else, that would be an interesting sort of other layer.
Right.
Thinking about how I'm going to approach my world language teachers next week.
There we go. Yeah. And I don't think this particular round of kids had the language quite enough to really be able to do it. But I would have loved if in their presentations, it was required that they had to explain, so for instance, the student from Vietnam, if it was required that he had to explain some element of the project that was not the dress from Vietnam, right? Like something that was not his culture. And so to just kind of, solidify that, this is all of our piece, all of our cultures together. But even
maybe in the creation of what they have done, and like you said, ELL students. Like, these are students who are probably just getting into their knowledge of English. And so to be able to communicate with others, create this thing, and then explain this thing is just a wonderful, wonderful exercise. And I'm sure that the folks who came to sit in and watch these presentations must have just been beaming as they watched these students sharing this.
I'm sure. I was so sad. I was teaching another class during the time that the
no.
presentations happened, so I wasn't even able to go, which made me so sad.
Oh, that's a
But
bummer.
I heard amazing things that they did
Yeah.
great. And I'm sure they did.
Well, absolutely. Man, this is such a wonderful exercise. And I mean, we've already kind of talked about how this could go in so many different directions. And there's so many elements and layers, and you could scale this up, you could scale it down. I can see this working with so many different grade levels and ability levels. Like, this is just so wonderful. And the tactile elements, I mean, this just has so much going on. It's so great. And I mean, you heard already from some of the folks that went to see the presentations that this really was working out pretty well, I guess.
Oh yeah, like I said, I did this just last week, but the first time we did this project was last year. So this was our kind of like second annual.
Okay.
And so, yeah, it went well enough. The teacher was absolutely adamant that he wanted to do it again.
That's awesome.
And like I said, it has now spread to the Spanish classes. So we'll see.
Yeah. I mean, that's the mark of a great lesson, that they come back, that the same person's going to come back for more, and then other people want to jump in on it. That's like, clearly you're doing something right there. So that's awesome. So if folks are thinking about, wanting to go out and practice this, try it out with some of their teachers or some of their students, do you have any tips or suggestions that they should kind of have in mind as they're getting ready to launch?
I would say make sure that you have the materials before you promise anything. Because
that's a good point.
It can be an easy trap to fall in, that you're talking to a teacher and, one of you has this idea and you just kind of roll with it and both of you are so excited. And then you realize, no, right? Like, I don't actually have the materials to pull this off. So I would say be careful about overpromising. Because you don't want to end up in one of those places where you're like desperately, calling for donations. Does anyone have, the day before the lesson or something?
Yeah.
That's not fun.
No, always under promise and over deliver. That's the way to go.
Exactly. 100. I would also say, especially with the English learners specifically, I mean, yes, they need some guidance and some scaffolding, but try to be as hands off as you can, because the kids will surprise you. They have a lot that they're bringing to the table. And so in a makerspace, that's an opportunity for them to stretch some of that and show some of that off.
Yeah.
So try not to be too heavy handed with them in particular, and let them come up with their ideas. And if ahead of time, that is not going to work, let them figure that out and let them problem solve, and they'll come up with something that's amazing. You just got to give them the space to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, so good. So much fun stuff here. Man, love it. Love it so much. I think we're at the point where we're going to take our 90-degree turn and go into our book break.
Book break.
Squiddy!
Woo!
Woohoo! So, what are you bringing to get on people's reading radar here?
So, a book I recently finished that, okay, let's be honest, it's very fluffy. But
nothing wrong with fluffy.
But it was just fun. It's a book called Nobody in Particular. It's by Sophie Gonzalez.
Okay.
It is a pretty typical royal romance.
Okay.
Except it is set in a private boarding high school, and it is the future queen of this country that is fictional. But for all of the listeners of a certain age, it's basically Genovia. It doesn't say Genovia, but it's Genovia from Princess Diaries.
It's funny because you were kind of giving the details of this, and I was thinking Princess Diaries. So that's interesting.
Right. And so it's dual perspective. We have a new girl. She is American who has now moved to this country and is put into and has gotten a scholarship to this very elite, hoo kind of boarding school. And one of the most exciting things about it for everyone else is that the future queen of the country also goes to the school. And so from that, they meet And there is a very cute slow burn romance between the two girls. But something I really appreciate, even though it's a very fluffy kind of rom-com, it does dive into some of the the expectations, especially with around the media for people in the public eye, especially royals. With the pressure to what the public expects you to be versus who you really are. There's some really great stuff in there for like just queer representation and just like issues in the queer community, regardless of royalty, also being added to it. So like it has some really good stuff to it. And it's a really fun little rom-com. So I do recommend that one.
That sounds good, man. I like that. That's I'm definitely looking for some fluffy stuff. I've been reading. I've been going down this fantasy rabbit hole lately with this one particular author who I had not realized had written about 1 billion books. I had read one a while ago and really, really liked it and did not realize it was. I knew it was part of a series, but I thought it was like a trilogy. It's an 8-part series. So I have been, And once I got into the first book and then got into the second book and then the third book, I was like, oh man, I'm enjoying this enough that I want to keep going. So now I'm on book 5 or 6 and I have already got the other ones on my Kindle and I'm just, they're very, very enjoyable. They're unlike most of the grimdark stuff that kind of is populating the fantasy scene right now. They're mostly like happy ending stuff, which is nice. But man, I absolutely need some nice, enjoyable stories in my queue. So this one might be
you just need like a world palette cleanser.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You need things to work out for the best sometimes.
Yes, exactly. Man, well, we've got a great book recommendation. We've got this great idea that we can take to our all different classes, but especially our ELLs. This is awesome. Once again, bringing the heat. I love it. Thank you so much. I greatly appreciate it. And listeners, just so you know, it is Friday evening. We are like beyond the school week and Stacy is still here, dropping knowledge, sharing stuff. I love it. I'm so grateful. Thank you so much. We are definitely going to hear from Stacy more in the future, folks, but you should also be checking her out online. Where should they go and find you if they want to track you down somewhere?
The best place is probably my Bluesky, where I am MamaGilbs, MAMA-Gilbs. You can also find me on Instagram. To be honest, it's mostly just pictures of like my cats. So that one I don't recommend as much unless you really love pictures of cats.
I have a feeling that's going to be very popular. That's awesome. Well, again, thank you so much. I greatly appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to chatting more with you sometime soon.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for letting me come back. And yes, let's do this as many times as you want.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the SLLN podcast. Be sure to check out the show notes for the episode. They feature links to resources shared by our guest, as well as ways to keep in touch with them, and links to the book break titles. I'd love to hear from you. If you have feedback, a comment, an idea, a question, or something you want to share, you can email drtlovesbooks@gmail.com. That's drtlovesbooks@gmail.com. Know a librarian with something we could learn from? Let us know. Until next time, be good, be safe, and be well.